Wonderful. So welcome everybody. Super, super excited to be doing this Q&A with you from following up from our Tuesday webinar on um, really getting to the heart of what your why is. And Donnie and Jeremy had shared with you more about their course and what they're doing, but the importance of the why. And so this is the Q&A section. And for those of you who are going to watch the recording of this, obviously there's going to be the ability to connect with them and get your questions answered directly with them. But of course, they have a course and all that. Again, as all of you know, for me, knowing your why is the most important things because we're going to weather some pretty heavy storms. And if you're not clear what that why is, the storms will take you out. So I really love this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jeremy and Donnie and let them get all your questions answered. Make sure you put the questions in the chat and they're going to answer more questions beyond that as well. So with that, Jeremy and Donnie, I'm so happy you guys are here. Thank you for doing this and go ahead and take it over.
Recording in progress.
Uh-oh.
All right. Get a little feedback there. Okay, well, welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you here. Looking forward to hearing some of your questions that you had there in the chat. As we talk through today, we want to review a little bit about what kind of we talked about last time, about finding your why, kind of directing you through the values sheets that you work through, different things there as well. So kind of seeing how all of that works together as it really helps clarify your journey as well. So as your questions come up, please feel free to let that join in as the questions come in together. So diving right in, let's take a look at your pre-session discoveries. Curious as to see what were some of the key insights that emerged. What were some of the things that you saw through your exercises that resonated with you or were something that resonated with you as you went through it? Maybe something you didn't know about, maybe something that as you were going through the values, things started to come up and you're like, oh, I'm seeing a theme here, or I haven't gone through something like this before. Would love to see kind of what some of those questions are. Let me pull through some of your, pull up some of your questions here. Oops. All right. I'll pull up the chat there. All right, perfect. Excellent. Okay. So, Mr. Donnie, as we're going through some of these questions, and we talk about values, some of the things I find is a lot of folks haven't really taken time to sit down and think through their values. And that's really oftentimes a very eye-opening experience as well, because it makes you pause. Sometimes it makes you really have to slow down and think through what are my values. In my experience working through this with team members in the past, oftentimes that's something that they really haven't stopped to do and think through what are my values and why does that connect to my bigger why? How does that connect to my purpose? That's just a longer process that many people just haven't, you don't sit there on the couch at the end of the day thinking, oh, what's my deeper values? So for you on your journey, as you were thinking through your process, as you were going through the values, what were some of the things that were unexpected, or maybe as you were going through that was a challenge or difficulty as you're thinking through some of those values?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out to me was how I was unaware of my personal values, right? How I didn't really connect. I think one of the things that we start with is the values bring a self-awareness. Oh, I didn't really realize that about myself, that I really did see that there was value. I have a huge value. It's not one of my top 5, but it's one of my top 10s towards justice. And I didn't see that living out in my life until I went back and what typically made me the most upset, quote unquote, in life is when I felt like people or myself weren't being treated justly.
Yep.
And so when I was able to go back and one of the practices that we have in the purpose model is to look at your childhood, to look at your adolescence, to look at the things in life that you go through. And when I go back and I look, many of the things that I saw was, as it played out in my life, was this idea of justice. And when it comes to my core values of excellence, for instance, I can see that being played out. But I don't think that a lot of times we we see that value in terms of our overall purpose, that those values are the things that bring us back to the reason why we do what we do. So I think that self-awareness and reflecting on why that matters so much. Why does it hit us so deeply in the midst of trying to understand? And so typically one of the fun things I love to do with people when I sit down and talk to them about this is, hey, tell us the story. Right? What's that story in your life that points back to this value? Because sometimes many of these values will point you back to, like my identity, my value of justice, my value of growth, that I never can just sit and just not be growth oriented. I'm always wanting to grow and to learn more. My value of excellence, the fact that I have a strange, unique problem with ordinary or complacency, right? Not with contentment, but with complacency. And I think I can go back to stories in my life and I can see that, man, that really impacted, and it really had an impact on me and my family. So I thought that was important.
100%. And I liked how you were talking about how it connects, and you were going back, and you can use those values to go back and relook at different things in your past, in your life, and from your childhood, your young adult years. We were talking about this a little bit already. You already hinted at it a bit. Your why in action, and you've already talked about how, hey, I don't want to stay stagnant. I don't want to choose ordinary, and that affects you and has an impact on your professional life, your home life, in really all aspects, finances, spiritual, home, because you have different roles. We talk about that in our program, from roles to goals. And each of the different roles that I have, whether it's a husband, a friend, a father, all those different things have different impacts to my why, but it's really in support of that. We talked about that a little bit last time, the difference between my purpose and then the calling. So I have different callings that could happen through life, but they all are really in support of that main purpose.
That's right.
So, we see that here. It affects your leadership, how you approach things at work, at home. By the way, leadership is influence. At Colere, we talk about that it's at its fundamental, simplest form could be defined as influence. And as you are influencing people in all the different areas of your life, knowing that bigger purpose and that why and your values affects that across the board. How you show up. We talk about authentic leadership. That really comes from your why. Not being, and again, leadership is so unique. Sometimes people think that it's has to be that person at the forefront, making the charge, making the changes. But really times leadership, it comes into a room and says, what can I do to make, and that adds the biggest value in this moment? And sometimes that might be simply taking out the trash. Sometimes that might be standing back and letting the young leader who's there actually make decisions, and you allow guidance and let them make decisions that might not be the best in that moment, but they're moving.
Right.
You've given an example of that. Sometimes I think as leaders, when we talk about authentic leadership and your why, understanding that you can't be paralyzed when you're leading, and understanding that, hey, if my purpose is to serve, or if my purpose is to have that bigger impact on people's lives, I cannot be paralyzed in decision making.
Right.
And you use this analogy that, hey, it may not have been the right decision in that moment, but great job, you made a decision.
Right.
You didn't freeze. And so understanding those values helps you navigate in the moment when it may not be as clear.
That's right. And I would even say, one of the things about putting your why in action, we have it written here, your why transforms how you approach challenges. Because when you approach challenges without purpose, then anything can really kind of take over that. So to be able to say, wait, it's that third boat idea, right? Okay, if we're headed in that direction, I need to know how we're going to make those decisions and what we're doing. And I think that's very important for us. And it does redefine success beyond metrics. Being a pastor and being involved in what I would say would be spiritual guidance in things of value. And I find the concept of talking through values and whys to be very interesting. The word value, this is what I bring worth to. This is what I this is what I ultimately value. I find that
Mhm.
interesting. But when we talk about it redefining success beyond metrics, one of the things that I often have seen is that one of the most difficult things to measure in the everyday stuff of life is our values.
Mm.
How do you measure excellence? How do you measure love,
Mm.
which is one of my core values? How do you measure success? How do you measure growth? So what you have to be able to do is take these intrinsic values that you have in your life, and you have to be able to see those through the lens of extrinsic actions, right? One of the ways I know that I love is by the way I serve, and maybe I could do it by hours of service. Maybe I could do it by the number of people I serve. So you bring this metric to it that is that reveals that extrinsic, what I would say the action that you're trying to facilitate, that ultimately is a demonstration
Mm.
of that intrinsic value that you bring to it. And I think
Yeah.
it makes us one of the things that we say here for professional impact. When you live on purpose, it creates sustainability because
Mm.
you can't burn out doing who you are. If
Yes.
what I find is burnout is the direct reflection of trying to work out of something that you haven't first worked in,
Mm.
right? So it's this idea that I'm working in an action that is contrary to my ultimate purpose. Because I can't get burned out on breathing, right? You don't get burned out on oxygen. You don't get burned out
That's a good point.
on blood flow, heartbeats. These are things that we need. So if you look at the values and you look at your purpose in the same metric, then what you'll begin to discover is where you discover burnout is where you've probably gotten off course. And I think that has been so important to us as we begin to look at it. And purpose alignment does bring ultimate satisfaction. One of the things that we would say theologically is that if the chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever, then the question therefore becomes, okay, so that's the ultimate humanity idea. So then the second idea would be, okay, how do I, as Donnie, glorify God and enjoy Him forever?
Mm.
And so that's where I find my purpose. That's how I find, and then no matter my calling, go to the third
Mm.
level of this idea. No matter my calling, I'm fulfilling that purpose, the penultimate purpose of my own direction, my own satisfaction, because the greatest satisfaction I have is doing what I'm ultimately made to do.
Yes.
And so I love the way Dave Ramsey says it. He says that what people do is they show you your value that you bring for whatever you have by giving you certificates of appreciation
Mm.
with president's face on them. And I like that idea. I think that's good. I think that's real. And I think it's beautiful ultimately.
It really is. And we talked a little bit about knowing your values, and as you're building out your why, and we walk through that process, it does bring clarity. You've already talked about it a little bit. Let's talk about that a little bit more. That decision, it helps you guide your decisions when you have that clarity and you know the values that are driving that. And also, it helps you know really your boundary lines as
Yeah.
well. That I'm not going to cross this line
Yep.
ethically because these are my values, or oh, I can't do that because this is something I hold dear. I can't compromise that. So it provides really that compass as you're going through different situations that come up, because really, as you're going through life, situations will happen when you're working with people or you're serving customers or you're out and about and you're in meetings. Things will come up that you may not have expected, but if you have that guide, that compass, you'll be able to navigate that. It also unlocks your productivity. When you understand what you're passionate about because you understand your why, now things that usually are dragging on, if you find yourself procrastinating consistently on a task, it might be time to look back and say, is this something that is fueling me to take actions toward my ultimate why, my ultimate purpose?
It's funny you say that. I just was interviewing somebody this morning at 11
Mm.
o'clock. And one of the things I told this young man is I said, because I asked him, I said, what's your greatest opportunity for growth, right?
Mm.
Just trying to figure out if there was a self-awareness there. And one of the things that he said was, I often don't give my all, right? And I was saying,
Mm.
that's very interesting. So we eventually got to the conversation on procrastination. And I said, do you know procrastination is actually often not a result of laziness? It's a result of loves.
Mm.
The reason you procrastinate in any given moment is because you're loving something more than the action that you're called to take.
Mhm.
And I think that what why does is why redirects, talking about direction, why redirects your intention to what your ultimate guide is,
Mm.
so that the other things that are distractions don't come in and get in the way of that. Because if you think about it, what you're doing when you're procrastinating is what? You are pushing off that which you ought to do for that which you want to do, right? So here's the idea. You are pushing off the action that is necessary because of a deeper love. You are loving something else in that moment. And
Mm.
that's what we don't want to do. So what people do often is, I hear parents do this all the time, right? I hear a lot of different ideas coming in for this. Is what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll say, son, stop being lazy, stop procrastinating, you're being lazy, go to work, which is true, right? But now all we have is their hands. Now they're going to go to work with resentment. Now they're going to go do what they do with frustration.
With his emotions.
Yeah, the teenage, the teenage rolling. I think Catherine was talking about that. The rolling of the eyes and the problem is that oftentimes we want to correct their action, but their action, remember, attitude is the outward reflection of our thoughts and our loves. So what
Mhm.
I want to do with my son and my daughters, I have 3 kids. What I want to do with them in the minute of their procrastination, I don't ask, why are you being so lazy? I ask, what are you loving?
Mm.
What are you wanting? Because if I can connect
Mm.
the activity, for instance, my daughter, who is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, valedictorian, 4.0, crazy smart kid.
Mm.
Um, but one of her often things that she often does is procrastinate. She'll push the things to the very limit. And I will go into her room and I said, hey, what are you loving right now? And she says, I am loving my rest more than I'm loving my work.
Ooh.
And I'm going, okay, so let's talk about that. What is unlimited rest ultimately going to provide you? What is that? Is that going to get you to where you want to be? What am I doing? I'm pushing her back to her why. Why don't you want to do your homework right now? Well, I love my son. I love playing video games. Okay, now talk to me. Is the playing of video games going to ultimately fulfill your why and why God has placed you here? If not, then you need what is discipline,
Mm.
right? This is what I talk to him about all the time. I said discipline is the conscious decision to put your future preferred self ahead of your present self until it becomes a habit.
That's really good.
And so, what is your preferred future self? It's your why. So, what I want to do is to push you towards that. And I think that's why your why becomes your compass, because what I can do is draw. And then when you talk about a business, I can draw everything back to that. Because I'm going to tell you, you were talking about this for last night
Mm-hmm.
when the store was going haywire and we
Boy.
had thousands, hundreds of people going in and
Lots of milkshake.
lots of milkshakes, and you had all this going on. But what we have to do in the midst of the chaos is we have to often bring people back because of the scattering of intentions. We have to bring them back. Hey, why are we doing what we're doing? And
Man.
for us, it's our business. Our why is to for our guest vision is to make a guest feel better about themselves when they leave than when they arrive.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
as you're making milkshakes and it's chaotic and everything's, hey, don't forget why we're here, because you can make a milkshake without making a guest feel special.
100%.
But if you do that, you're missing the whole
You missed the
purpose,
point.
that's what gets you ultimately off track in your business and in your life.
It's so true. What we just did is that is a gold mine of parental advice, business advice. There's a lot there to unpack. So if you need to pause and go back, if you're watching the live stream later, that would be highly encouraging. Go back, take some notes, because that was a wealth of different things there from at home, and that also shows how that cross bridged. You went from at home with your own children, and then you went straight to the business and life, and there's different things
Sure.
there, and it applies. And so that's why this is so powerful.
Yes, think about this. We said that your ultimate why is directly connected to all your callings.
Mhm.
So my why, to influence the faithful and passionate pursuit of an excellent life for the glory of God, right? That's my why. That's why I believe God has placed me here. And so everything I do, from a father to a husband, to a operator, to a CEO, to a friend, to a boss, to whatever position, whatever calling I'm in at that moment, is going to be manifested through that. And I think that's where your why continues to keep you on trajectory, that no matter what you do, you facilitate that.
One of the things that these exercises we provided a couple days ago, and allows you to really stop and pause and realign. So we also have a term for it. We sometimes call it plan, do, check, adjust in our terms, but it really makes you stop. Does the action I'm doing, is the thing I'm doing right now in my business, at home, if I'm feeling tension, maybe it's time we're in a realignment. I remember this a couple of years ago. Actually, one of the very first times I actually got the opportunity to hear you speak was this concept of alignment. And when you gave the analogy, I believe it was one of your daughters, the car wheels were out of alignment, and they kept delaying the going to the mechanic and getting it realigned. And what was causing issues started small, but over time it became worse and worse. And that can cause other damage to the vehicle, right? This is the same thing personally. If you start to feel that tension, it may be time to stop, pause, slow down a little bit. If that check engine light comes on, hey, I need to realign. So one, you can start with asking this simple question: does this align with my why? As I'm thinking through my values and that's connecting to my why, does this align with what I'm wanting to do? And then second, am I filtering through the decisions that I need to make through that purpose in order to make those adjustments? And then if I need to make adjustments, hey, talk to your boss, talk to your supervisor, talk with your operating partner, talk with your spouse. That's a great feedback, great backboard, so to speak. And then repeat. Constantly looking back at the end of the day. Maybe start the day with, I think Ms. Catherine actually talked about this, start the day, here's my why, here's what I want to accomplish, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then at the end of the day, you can say, all right, how did I do in these areas? And by the way, it's easy if you're like me to have a whole list of things. This is what I want to do today. But the reality is I really need to focus on the top 3 things that I need to accomplish today. And it may not be super, super deep, because sometimes I'll come at the end of the day and think, man, I don't feel like I got a lot done today. But when I actually stop and think about it, I did get a lot done today. So taking time, if you start to feel that alignment to process through that, plan, do, check, adjust. I'm going to plan, hey, this week I'm going to do this. And then each day, I'm going to take time to reflect on how did I do with the thing I needed to accomplish today. And that always helps really be that check-in, so that you're not 50 miles down the road with broken down, but you've had time to realign as you go. That's a huge, huge reflection there. As you're going through this, we'd love to hear some of your values that maybe you've gone through. What personal values reflect your why? As you're starting to think through that, I'm going to check the chat here real quick as we go through that. What were some of the values that you came up with? Keep it concise, memorable, write some things down. Maybe you found that integrity and honesty were on your list. And you might think, well, aren't those the same things? But they may not be. So as you think about it, if you have something that maybe are like synonyms and they're similar, maybe ask yourself, okay, what does this mean specifically to me, right? So integrity, many times we think of is a whole. It can also mean the ability to withstand pressure, thinking like a submarine hull, right? To have the integrity to withstand that pressure, that's also integrity. And then you have honesty as well. Sometimes you get those twisted, but they actually can mean different things. So as you're thinking through that, write it down and then share. If you need help, share that with somebody, share it with us, share it with a partner, share it with a friend. Hey, here's some ways I've identified values. I need help finding ways to implement it throughout my day and my week. Get community insight. Who are the closest people on your team that you can go to? Be a little bit more vulnerable with. Remember, part of this process is going to take a lot of humility, a lot of vulnerability, because it's going to be uncomfortable. So as you're learning more about discovering this purpose, because you are discovering it, we're working through that, you're going to have to learn through some of that. Ask them, hey, have you thought through your values? Have you thought through your why? And you oftentimes find the things that you're passionate about will be in that same circle. So getting that feedback will be helpful as well. And then what you're finding now, you'll often find will unlock different things that you didn't think would be possible in the past. As you're really looking through. What I mean by that is you may find now, hey, A year ago, I didn't think it was possible for me to lead this team, but here we are a year later, and I am. And as I was discovering my why and refining it and looking for opportunities to grow, that unlocks more possibilities that you weren't thinking about
Mm.
and a greater opportunity for you to exercise living out your why.
Mhm.
So all of those things are possible, but sometimes you have to be willing to step out a little bit,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit of stretching.
Yeah.
So that's part of the process as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when I look at the value, let's go back to the value exercise that we gave. There was one before that that I want to just briefly touch on as well. But the values exercise, sometimes you'll get these values and you'll sit down, let's say with 10 of them, and you'll be asking yourself the question, hey, man, all these are difficult to understand or difficult to differentiate, right? How do I cut out truth and honesty? I got to pick one of those. Oh my gosh. Well, the two things that I always say is pick the opposite and see how that can influence the way in which you think, right? Like how would you look at a specific value and then look at its opposite and see if that has any clarity and provide any clarification for you.
Love it.
And the second thing I would say is oftentimes what I do with like my top 10, my top 5 is I going through those and I would say adjectivize them, which is the idea of add an adjective. Like if it was growth, I want to relentlessly grow. Or if it was excellence, I would want to pursue excellence. Sometimes if you can provide like an adverb or an adjective, some sort of descriptor, it will help kind of create that clarity that you need for your values. But the other process that we went through was we gave a personal worksheet away,
Right.
but we also gave the trusted advisor. And I think that's important here for the request support. I could give you my story here. Growing up without any real leadership in my life, real masculine leadership in my life, with my dad and my stepdad being who they were. My father-in-law became the man that I really respected. And one of the things that I did with him one time, I can tell you the place, I could tell you the car, I could almost smell it. I was asking him, why wasn't I a good leader? And his reflection back to me was painful, but it was beautiful. It was through that pain that I ultimately was able to grow as a man and as a leader, as a husband, as a father, ultimately. I would say take that trusted feedback form, give it to 3 to 5 people, and have them respond to you and sit down and think through what areas am I, number one, what area am I displaying that I want to be? Right? Where does that match? And that's where you find some beauty. But where are areas that they're seeing that I might not want to display? And how can I make those changes as well? So that's very important.
Very important. So some next steps. Let's talk about as you're working through this, what are the next steps for you? So as you're going through, continue to work on your purpose statement. Now, this is just a small portion of the course that we offer. But as you're working through these and you're developing your values, you're working on getting support and feedback back from trusted advisors, friends, family members, it will help you start working through that same and piece some things together, making it clearer and more actionable for you as well. As you ask some of the support group, you may even ask you, sometimes they're clearer about what you're passionate about are than sometimes you are. So getting their feedback is huge. Sit down. If you haven't had a mentor or a coach, find someone who is maybe a few years farther down the road from where you are right now, and sit down with them and share with them some of the things you're discovering, some of the values that you're working through, some of the challenges, or maybe some of the pressure or the stretching that you're experiencing. That insight sharing with them, they'll be able to give you clarity because, by the way, they're farther down the road, so they may have already gone through this process, and they'll be able to provide you insight. And that will help you lead and make directions and decisions with clarity, putting that through that filter, but having that outside experience and speaking into that as well. And you'll begin to start to see how your decisions begin to align more with that why, that bigger purpose. And you'll be able to see that in all the different areas of your life. So
Yeah.
that's the next steps.
Yeah. So something I will just remind us that we have the PURPOSE, and this is just the middle P. This is just one. And then the two other things that you were given, those are at the beginning, which are not even included in the process. So There's much, much more depth here.
Yeah.
But let me, what I want to do is kind of help you think through your why through a clear statement. And the framework that I want to give you is to blank, to whatever your contribution is, so that blank. All right. So to blank, so that blank. So to influence the faithful and passionate pursuit of an excellent life, so that I can glorify God. Right. Mine's a little bit. I've been doing it for a long time, but that's where I start with anybody kind of coming up with their why. So to then what is your contribution to do this so that impact. I want to impact in this way. One of the ways I say it is the to part describes your distinctive contribution, the value you bring, and the so that part describes the difference or the impact that you want to create.
Yep.
So if you can begin that process of drafting. So what I started with is I literally drafted 5 why statements, right? I want to do this so that I can do this. And what you'll begin to do is then outside of that, you're going to draft what we call the 30, 60, 90. These are 30, 60, 90-day plans that if I were to live out this why, then this is the way it's going to look over the 30, 60, 90 days. And then what happens after 30 days, you're going to you'll begin to see, okay, that one, I really didn't feel joy there. That's not where I was expressing, or you can go back and refine it.
Yep.
And the last thing I'll say is this, and I think this is so important. It's taken me years to really come up and to discover, if you will, my why. Why? Your why is not something like a lost stone that you're trying to find and uncover, right? You're trying to figure it out. It's more about discovering something inside of you. So the first thing I would do is develop your why statements through that process so that to blank, which is your contribution, so that blank, which is your impact. So that's how you form those sentences. Do about 5 of those. And then what you want to do, schedule some time with mentors, coaches. You can reach out to us. Jeremy's going to put that in the chat. You can find out where we are at colere.world through our landing page for this particular purpose. And then you want to share that with your mentors, your coaches, share that with your group of people, your leaders, those people around you. I think it was said earlier that we have a nuanced version of this statement at Colere. Oftentimes you will hear it in terms of, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around. Well, when you go back and you study the actual study that found this out, actually what you'll discover is you're the average of the 5 people that you allow to influence you the most. So what I would say is, who are those 5 people that influence you the most in your life? Go back, connect with them, give them the 5 whys, and see what they say, get some feedback to them, and then begin to make decisions through that filter. And what I want you to do is note the impact, right? Note the impact on your contribution, and note how you're impacting in your life, and that will bring more clarity as you begin to process through this refining your why process.
I love it. So we already talked about that. As we wrap up today, we want to say thank you, and let's stay connected. For Catherine Bell, you can see her contact information here. For me and for Mr. Donnie, you can see us there at colere.world. We do have a landing page that we'll be able to have you be able to access if you look us up there to find that why journey that we have, as well as to be able to download those free sheets, the 3 ones that we provided in the last session. You'll be able to go to this landing page and download those for free for you to be able to start working through some of those values yourself.
That's right.
So that is available for you, and we'll be able to put that here in the chat and as well. And then continue growing. One of the things that we talk about, leaders are readers, and they continue to grow. But you have to have different resources in your life. So Colere does have some other options as well for that. We have a leadership development program that is 3 different levels. That is really suited for teams. It can also be done as individuals as well.
Yeah.
But it really walks through that. We talk about that in the first session with the different levels. You have level 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So rooted, flourish, and cultivate. And so that is available for you as well, because as you continuously learn, that will give you the tools and the resources you need as you go in on this journey, and it will help you be able to help others on their journey as well.
Yeah, so that the LDP program, if you're a business owner, and you would like to have a leadership development program or a partner in your leadership development, we would love to partner with you. This is a 20-year program that we've developed that I think is going to be very instrumental, and we're beginning to launch that. And then the other thing is we can also come to you and do workshops or sessions, not only with why, absolutely we can do it with why with your group of people. It would take about 2 days to go through that together in a 2-day process. But we also have anything from our leadership process for, we call it infinite leadership, which is based upon the situational leadership guidelines, decision making, how we teach 16 to 60-year-olds to run a $12 million chicken business by making decisions, and the framework behind that. Anything from our culture cultivating process. So if there's anything that we can do for you, or if you're saying, hey, I don't know if y'all have this, can you help us? Man, just reach out to us. I would love to sit down with you and even maybe even cultivate something with you. So that would be exciting.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure today. Drop the link in the chat there. If you don't see access to the chat, excuse me, you can find it at www.colere.world/y-coach-framework. So you can look up that landing page and be able to access those things as well. Catherine, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you guys. I really want to encourage everybody to lean in and to have conversations with you. Again, whether it's individual or like you were talking about on teams and corporately, because knowing what your why is, it's the biggest thing ever. So super excited to have you guys here. And I know that we're going to have more conversations and have you guys come on and do other things with us. So thank you both for, having your why be so clear inside of sharing this with everybody. So this is amazing. You're both amazing, and have an extraordinary day. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you all.
Okay, God bless. Bye, guys.